You are listening to Within Tolerance, a podcast for machinists by machinists. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson of Pro D Machining. And this week we're doing another catch-up episode. And as always, I've got my catch-up co-host, Chris Zappettini. How's it going, man?
Oh, I am living it, loving it, baby. Hot off of driving back from Maryland and stopping in Pottstown, Pennsylvania to have dinner with past and future guests, Alex Kern and Dan Rudolph. That was cool.
That seemed like so cool. I was very jealous and, messaged you tongue in cheek, like, oh, they're real people. That's cool. I met Alex at IMTS, but I'd love to actually get to hang out with Dan.
Yeah, Dan, that was cool. I got done. So I was in Maryland doing Kiwa horizontal training, which was a lot of fun. And I had done some things. I kind of did some things differently on this training because this was kind of one of my first experiences truly teaching somebody who had never touched a machine before. And it's like, and he was a third shift guy, good, like super smart, older guy that was like, I need to know how to run this thing and keep this running on third shift. And it was like, oh, fuck. Okay. So I've always done it with most of the time, actually, most of my training experience with methods was just like kind of going through general machine stuff and then being like, bye. But now that I'm on my own and doing training, I did a little bit more, which was like I created some like simulated programs for the to like be able to assign one to one pallet and one to the other pallet. And all it really did was like turn the spindle on and like change tools and then turn the spindle on. But it got them with like the experience of in a low stakes environment of being like, this is how you load tools. This is how you touch off tools. And this is how you assign the pallet. And then this is how you run it. And then doing like a little bit like, this is how you do this. All right, now we're going to start over and then go a little bit further. And then we're going to start over and go a little bit further and just kind of doing that, like building, muscle memory. Just that's the only way you do it is reps and reps and reps and reps. And by the end of the week, the dude took exceptional notes too, which was like shout out to note taking. Like, one of the guys was like, I never know what to write down. And I was like, just write everything down,
Right. You can edit later. It's okay.
Yeah. Just write it all down. And he almost never wrote anything down. And towards the end, you get the cocky and it's like, all right, so it's your turn now. And it's like, well, what am I doing? Like, we're going to set this up. And it's like, what do your notes say? Doing that whole thing.
Yeah.
And then once we were there, then we brought some of the other guys, the more experienced guys in, got them going to the same level, more or less, and then set up a part with them, like a real part, their part. And then we were done by like 1:00 on Friday, which was nice because then I hit up Dan and was like, hey, I'm done. Can I come by the shop? And I went to his shop, which was rad. It's just stuffed in there. And that man is doing like insane. It's hilarious how he's like, they're just like parts in like Tupperware,
Right.
And it's like, yeah, that, and you're like holding it and it's like, that's 5,000 parts in like 3 weeks worth of work. And it's like, dude, that would fit in the palm of my hand, and it's like the tiniest little thing. And good. Like then we went upstairs and checked out like his like inspection room and their like finishing room. And they just have like UR robots everywhere, which was rad. And this like microscope with a monitor on it, which was really cool. And like just some of the stuff that he's doing was like, it's just like, what? How are you doing this? Like, this is absurd.
That Swiss stuff is crazy. Like I've been giving Zach a bunch of shit because he keeps posting all those screws he's making on Instagram.
Yeah.
And he'll be like, oh yeah, this is 1,000 parts and it looks just like an empty strainer, basically. I'm like, cool. All right.
Yeah. And you're like, well, there it is. And that's a lot of work. And you're like, it's like, how do you like, what's your process for setting that up? And he's like, well, this is my setup piece, and it's like this big, you know, like half an inch long with like extra to like cut it off. And it's like, how do you find that?
Right. Well, and like I've done small parts, and yeah, it's not like the cutting of them that's hard. It is the inspection and handling and like making sure you don't crush them or ding them or anything like that. Like they might not be damaged by a fall, but it's very easy to, you know, crush them in pliers, or if you're like trying to grab them with something.
When you look at when he first turned on the microscope, I didn't see the part that was sitting there, and he just like put his finger on it and like grabbed a part, and it was like, what? And there's like, it's this like little tiny thing with all these OD grooves, and it's like, how thin is that wall? It's like, it looks like there's nothing there. And he's like, oh, you know, like it's like 2.5, and you're fine at 2.5 thou wall. And it's like, what? That's, I mean, like percentages and all that stuff, because it's so tiny, and you're like, but it's like, I just can't even, like, it's like, oh, I couldn't imagine being like, yeah, 2.5 thou wall is totally doable. It looks gorgeous.
So okay, yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, me that's a no quote, but then it's like, yeah, okay, cool, yeah, let's do it.
It's like, yeah, no problem. Yeah, that was cool. Then he followed me, and we went to this like diner in the middle of nowhere, diner/liquor store that was in the middle of like,
really?
Yeah. It was in the middle of like, I don't know, it's just somewhere in between like him and Alex, and we just had dinner for like, we got some Sammys, you know, and just hung out for like 2 hours. And when we do the book club episode, I'm gonna make Alex tell a story that he told us, because he was like red in the face, barely able to get it out, laughing so fucking hard. And it was about like one of the guys who works with him or whatever, and it was truly hilarious. And he was losing it.
I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah. And then, yeah, outside of that, I've just been working a fucking ton. I've gotten like, because I've been going like, I mean, I think I talked about it on the last one about like starting to get busier. Now I'm busy. Like, I've sold a bunch of jobs. We have a bunch of projects, like one in Arizona, one in LA, kind of back to back, and still need to go to New York to do some work, and possibly getting like a turnkey in Delaware. I mean, I'm in Massachusetts right now. I'm going to see James Servin and Sean Servin on Monday to help them dial in their fusion stuff, which kind of came as a result. It was kind of interesting. Like, I just like want to just quickly address the whole Scoop situation. Like, he doesn't work for me anymore. He didn't leave on his own accord. He's doing his thing, which is fine. That's whatever. He started that company while he was working for me, and that's why he doesn't work for me anymore, because it was kind of, you know, a little bit of a conflict of interest, we'll say. So, like, I mean, he's free to do what he does, but we aren't associated anymore.
Right, yeah.
So,
no, I can see that. Like, yeah. Had I been running a aerospace shop underneath my last boss rather than like a completely different prototype shop, like, I think that there might have been a little bad blood there when I left.
If you like work for like a company building satellites, and you're like, I think I'm going to start building satellites myself. Like, wait, excuse me? Yeah. It's
so
just like an interesting.
I understand that.
Yeah, it's just like, it gets to be, it's just weird. It gets weird. So that's where that is. And like, Servin talked to him, and then he called me and was like, so can you come help us? I was like, yeah, sure. And I happen to be here already. So it kind of works out. Shoot. And then we can I can kind of roll this into one of the questions, actually.
About the lathe stuff?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So learning the machining. Oh, shoot. I covered it up. Learning the machinist craft. I wanted to hear more about the 2 probes in the single lathe. He's always wanted to put a probe in a lathe, but has always been scared by the thought of them getting damaged or knocked out of calibration by chips, coolant, etc. So give us the scoop. You had a really successful turnkey, I guess, or whatever you want to call it.
I don't know. Like it was for Morris Group or whatever. This like gigantic project that they've been working on for like a year. Like it was like 3 machines and a robot or whatever is like the easiest way, like, and probably the most non-committal way to say what it was doing. And each machine had probes. 2 of the machines had 1 probe because they were B-axis, and then the MO8 had 2 probes in it because it needs to probe front and back. I kind of came in to back cleanup, more or less, because they had another contractor on that gig who had spent like 10 days working on the probing, which is an absurd amount of time, in my opinion. And he, like, kind of the straw that broke the camel's back was the last time he came in, he was there for like a couple days, and then like showed up, didn't really talk to anybody, left, didn't tell anybody what he did, and then they tried to run it and do like a cycle that verified that like there was or was not a part in a chuck or like in the par like in there when they were going to start it, and it broke the probe like right away because of just bad logic. Like it found it but then kept driving to the position it was trying to go to. so like,
exactly what Nathan was worried about is that kind of stuff. Yikes.
And in terms of I thought it was fucking rad. Like, it's kind of funny on that machine specifically because that's like a $75,000 lathe and there's probably like $30,000 worth of probing on it, which is just silly, but yeah, it works great. I mean, it works just like how any other probing system works. You can, like, the math gets kind of interesting because all the probing stuff is based on machine position. So if you're like doing a diameter, you're going to get a radius value. So you need to do you just need to do more math to like double values and shit like that to get like, oh, what is this? And if you don't necessarily have like the y-axis, you kind of have to bank on your part being centered, you know? Because you can't, like, if you can't go all the way around it to like measure a diameter, you're just like, well, hopefully you could just like probe it, rotate C, and be like, is this value like generally the same all the way around? And then maybe average that and double that value.
But even then, you can't really fix it then if you just have XC, right?
Yeah.
You can't dial anything in.
Yeah. You could
error out, but like you can't like move your tools to match it now.
Yeah. You can. It's not like a mill where you're like, oh, I probed this point and it's too high, so I just go in here and say that's lower by the amount that it needs to be. You're like, I probe this, it's this number, I double it, it's off by this much. You kind of introduce a little bit or a lot of bit of error because you're just doubling things. That was kind of one of the issues we ran into with the other guy's logic, because we just the timeline was such that we couldn't start over. So I had to work with what we had. And there was just like, it was doing a lot of math inside of a macro rounding thing. And so it was error on top of error on top of error. Because it was like, this number doubled. Yeah, this number doubled times 25.4 to get to, that. And then rounding. And it's like, oh, so if it was off by a little bit, then it gets doubled. So then it's off by a lot more. Then it gets approximated. Then it gets rounded. And it was just like, that doesn't work. And it was also a thing of just like really like a lot of hard coded values inside of the program. And we found a lot of like, it was just like interesting things that also didn't necessarily have to do with the probing. It was just like, it's a giant cell. It's like a $4 million project or something like that. And there's just like a lot of moving pieces where one other piece of the cell wiped out another piece of machine stuff. So
Yikes.
it like, you're like, why is this, like, something isn't right? And it's like both, like, these two machines have the exact, like, that are similar machines, like they're the same model number, but their work offsets are exactly the same. And I'm like, did you guys grid shift these to make that a thing? And they're like, what do you mean? It's like, okay, so no. Yeah. So it's like,
no.
so like, why are they the same? And they're like, they're not the same. And it's like, right, but they are. And they're like, no,
Yeah,
no.
The numbers are though.
Yeah, they're like, no, they're different. It's like, I agree with you. They should be different, but at this moment, they are to the 10th. Actually, like, this machine had 5 place decimals in inch. So it's like to the millionth, exactly the same. And they're like, oh, that's a problem. Like, yes, exactly. That is a problem. And like,
oh boy.
It's an interesting thing working on projects of that scale coming in so late and like to do this much of it when it's like, oh man, and like keeping on track to my particular scope of it when it's like, I could help with other things, but it's like, you can't. And it feels weird, but it's like, this is my portion of the job.
Right.
And
so, but you got it all sorted.
Yeah, right. And so as a result, and like kind of going back to the question is, I don't know. I can't really answer the reliability and the long lasting aspect of it. Like in terms of in this particular application, there really aren't that many chips. And to mitigate chips, they're doing a lot of like milling of features instead of turning of features so that it like makes sure that they're small. And this is a turnkey. So like this machine is only going to do what it's doing right now forever and ever. So once they have it dialed, it should pretty much just stay the way it is, you know, outside of like somebody doing some dumb shit and crashing it. But it's like, that's the same thing on any machine. If you change stuff and crash your probe, then things are bad, regardless of what it is.
Yeah. Well, I would imagine that if you were just putting one probe on a lathe, that it might make more sense to put it on the sub side, which would
it's
probably
kind of
protect it a little bit too.
Yeah, exactly. That would be true because you kind of like keep it in between. Yeah, it's like 50-50 where you're either going to, it's either going to create a nice little like cove for it to be in when you're cutting, or it's going to create a place where it's going to get fucked up because chips get stuck in between the turret and the firewall, and that doesn't move, and so then the probe will get knocked around. But in this case, it won't. And so like with all things, the cop out answer is like, it really depends on your application. Yeah, like I think it's rad. Like it was fun to do. Like I've never really done anything like it before, but it was still just rent-a-shop probes and whatever. So all the cycles were familiar. It was exactly like working on a mill, with just like extra steps for the math. Super dope. If you're interested in it, I would say go for it, and then figure out how to make it not get fucked up, messed up, like later on. Yeah. And like, it's one of those things like, on this project in particular, I could like, and it'll come up a lot more in the Toyota Kata episode when we get there, but it's just like order of operations to solving problems, which is like, if you have X problem, don't solve Y problem also while trying to solve X, because like trying to do both of those things simultaneously is hard. So it's like, if you need probing, like get the probing in, then or like either solve your chip issue first and add probing, or add probing then solve your chip issue, one then the other, because like you can figure your way out of that box. Like these guys with one machine barely running, and they hadn't had, like, the customer hadn't bought off their parts yet, or like, man, we were like, what is the cycle time going to be? And it's like, probably don't worry about it. You know, maybe you make good parts first, and then like then you worry about cycle time, which isn't the sexy answer. People like to make fireballs and go really, really fast, but also if you make scrap really fast, that's like, nobody's impressed by that. the customer isn't like, wow, you destroyed a lot of material, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, I've said that numerous times to a few people of like, the customer doesn't care how you make your parts.
Not at all.
They don't care what machine it's on. They don't care how long it takes. You obligated yourself for a certain price and a certain deadline, and that's what they care about.
Yeah, and we could probably segue this into now you have a Hermle. And
speaking of things my customers don't give a shit about.
I mean, I guess like in this case though, they kind of do, because they were like, Dylan, can you do this stuff? And you're like,
yeah,
you're like, show daddy the money, and we can.
Yeah, so let's see. From the Patreon, Johannes was asking me about the Hermle. Matthew Clark asked about Heidenhain and if I'm doing any conversational. And Justin at PDX CNC also was asking about, and Connor Manufacturing. We're all asking about the new shop and the new machine. So Hermle's going great so far. Currently working through our first customer order on the machine. Machine is awesome. Like it just kind of does what it's supposed to. And, getting to do fancy 5-axis tool paths that I've always seen in demos and stuff. It's just fun. Like it's the most fun I've had machining in a really long time.
Yeah. It's neat to see like the random like videos and messages come through of the hype in the group chat, because it's like, oh, sick. Yeah.
Yeah. It's fun.
Sorry.
Go for it.
Are you doing, like, does the part require full 5, or are you just like, because you have 5, you're just like, I want to try this,
The part I'm doing is fairly freeform.
Yeah.
Some of the surfacing I'm doing is just because I can, and then some of the surfacing I'm doing is like you could accomplish it by many indexes and 3-axis surfacing, but it is better accomplished by a 5-axis toolpath. I think.
That's nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. It was kind of, dude, I really like.
And in the words of my favorite grandma, it's kismet, baby.
Listen. I don't think I stepped in hot water on this first part, but I definitely didn't give myself an easy first part. Like it is not a block with holes on many sides. It is fairly complicated with some pretty unique fixturing, and I kind of threw myself into the deep end right off the bat. So
not like us to do that,
No, definitely not.
Yeah.
But no, it's been great so far. Like the machine is so rigid and so fast. I keep forgetting. So like for my standard tools, I just cut off the BT30 holders in Fusion and threw on the HSK ones.
Yeah.
And left all the speeds and feeds the same. So I've been running everything at like 10 grand still. And so I'm like, oh yeah, I've got 8,000 RPM more that I could technically use.
Yeah, and the machine's like, snooze fest. Are you even trying? Like, come on. Yeah. Honk shoe king over here.
Heidenhain's been great so far. It's definitely somebody asked about that too, how it was adapting from the Brother control. Aussie Machinist asked, biggest challenge going from Brother to Heidenhain. A lot's different. Like it's just a lot to learn. There's all these cycles. There's no G code. The code is very similar, but the way it does things is very different than I've ever done. Like there is tool center point control and M codes for that, but there's no like tilted work plane or anything. Like the machine is just doing that math all the time. My preset is on top of my length plate, so it's like an inch and something above where it thinks the 0 point is, and it just is doing that math. Like it just knows where it is.
Yeah, it's very interesting talking to people, because like it just doesn't work. It doesn't work that way. Like you just don't do that really on like a FANUC control or whatever. So it's like you're doing a lot of different shit, and you're seeing, and like you have to like tell it. That's part of what I'm helping Servin with, is like his shit's kind of wonky, and you're definitely not doing that on like a fucking Haas or something,
Right.
Like you have to be like very cognizant of how dialed in everything is and like where it is in space. And this is just like, and this is the thing that like we've talked about on here even, is like it's a purpose built multi-axis control, and fucking surprise, it does it really well. Crazy.
Yeah, the second toolpath I ever ran on the machine was a full 5-axis geodesic toolpath, I think, which, by the way, that toolpath is like
it's magic.
Easy button for 5-axis right now. It's really cool.
I need to go when I get back to Idaho. I'll probably give it a shot on the UMC and be like, wow, this and then put it in the group chat so that Mickey can like roast me relentlessly about about the motion. How it's not as good as the Kern or whatever.
Yeah. No, but it was the second toolpath I ever ran, and super, super terrifying because the thing my brain hadn't comprehended yet is like, yeah, I might be programming at 60 inches a minute, but because it's tool center point control, it's flipping those axes so quickly to maintain that 60 inches a minute at the tip.
Yeah,
and so like I might have had it turned down.
Right.
Like I had it turned down to like 10 inches a minute for the first few passes, but when it gets to that point where it wants to flip, it's still whipping around there. And it terrified me just a little bit.
It's the whole thing with like a tool, and when your SF at 0, like the middle center of a tool is technically like infinite, you know, and it just keeps getting faster the more you go in. It's like the same thing where like, oh, I'm maintaining this speed, and it's like, and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I've hit a point that I need to rotate at. Okay.
Yeah.
It's oh man, it was just so much fun though.
Did I do good? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm getting used to the laser and setting up tools. It's more work than I'm used to because there's so much more intelligence going on behind the scenes that you have to build these tool tables for every tool that you're loading in. But it also means that like it's very intelligent about it. It knows what tools are in the machine, and it knows what's going on, and it knows if the tool is supposed to have TSC or not, and like won't let it not have, won't let me accidentally turn it on or something.
Yeah. That's super cool. And you can like sideload a lot of that shit if you feel like, if you have like your stuff built out correctly. I know, because like some other company that we work with has done just that, where you're just like, all right, putting the tool in, and it just like, as you put the tool in, just all that information comes with it.
Yeah, that's something I need to start exploring, is because you can do CSV imports with all that data.
Yeah.
And then there's a few different ways that like you can overwrite, or you can append, or you can do all this stuff. And so I need to kind of play around with that behavior and figure out which one is best for us. Because like I could just overwrite the tool table every single time, and then every single program, it would just reset the tool. Or I could append, I don't know. I'll have to figure out how I want to do all that. But that's on the list.
Yeah, something that you'll figure out as as you make more parts. Kind of the same thing. Like first things first is like make that thing make money, and then figure out the best workflow for it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and thankfully this first job is a few payments of the machine. So like it is tough, but like once I get it done, it'll be like, okay, cool. And we still have part of our skip on the loan right now. So like we're not paying for the machine, which makes the stress super, super low in terms of like, okay, I can take my time. I can get my post dialed. I can get all this stuff working, and then make money when I need to pay for the machine.
Yeah. So this isn't a question. I guess like we could say the new shop / machine, but like in terms of, I don't know how into it you want to get, but like in terms of financial outlook with the new shop and the new machine, like was the move about what you thought it was going to be cost wise, and if not, like which direction was that? I'm assuming it was probably a little bit more than you were expecting, and then like you have the loan skip, and then you got rent abatement, right?
That's already done though.
Oh, that's already done. Damn.
Yeah.
Well, at least you were able to get through the move without having to like, because I mean, it was, what'd you say, 7x more or something like that?
Yeah, we have increased our expenses a lot. It is a little terrifying. Like we're doing totally fine. I'm not worried about the company, but like, a couple of months of just hemorrhaging money has sucked. And like it's the little things too that you don't realize. Like I've bought thousands of dollars in tables just so that like the machines have a place for you to put tools and things like that. Just stuff we didn't have room for in the other shop that it's not even a want, but like a need. Like if I didn't buy these tables, where are you going to put, you know, your vice wrench and things like that next to the machine? So, it's tough. It's tough. And like watching the bank account shrink, it's like, okay, I'm very glad for the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've been making parts and shipping parts, and that's felt really good. And it's like, okay, I'm putting my finger in the hole in the dam, and it's holding for now. So like, it's good. And I think once the Hermle's up and running, and I'm like actively making a few parts a week, or you know, a part a day or something like that on it, I will feel much better.
Because it's interesting, like having like back-to-back seen your old shop and the new shop, you know, when the machines were like facing each other, they could all kind of share a space, you know, that you put stuff down because there was no space.
Right. Yeah.
And now it's like, it's so spread. You could put like double the machines at least, like with room to spare in the shop space that you have right now, and still be pretty comfortable, which is kind of interesting. You'd have to put like a lot of machines in there to get as stuffed as you were before, which is crazy. And I
think to get as stuffed as we were before, we would almost have to triple the amount of machines we have.
Like that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's what we call a room for growth, baby.
Right. Yeah. And it's crazy. Both Brad and I have commented that we both feel more productive just because we're not so cramped. Like we both, I loved working in the shop at our old shop. Like I loved the work we were doing.
Right.
I did not like being there. I did not like, it was a very oppressive feeling place because it was so packed.
Yeah. Nothing had a home, right? Everything had multiple homes, and that home was wherever it would fit at that moment. Where now that's like you have tables and what is it, like toolboxes, where it's like, oh, I have like a tool crib, you know. Now that you have 2 PG units now. Shout out the Hermle purchase, you know, right. Where it's like and then they have and everything has its own space, and it's like, and it's not cramped at all. You have tool carts, which is like, oh shit. Well, you're getting rid of the tool cart, but it's like nice to have that, you know, and it's like, damn, it's crazy.
Yeah. And having offices, like we have an office that's just laser and 3D printing now. Like that's cool. Those are things that the laser was tucked behind a machine in between 2 shelves and like covered with a tarp so that it didn't get crap on it all the time. And now it's got its own home. Yeah,
dude, we moved how much engine shit into just one office, you know, like you have an office dedicated to like engine building, and like a server room and a break room.
Speaking of which, you haven't been on since that happened. Thank you on air. Thank you for helping me, Chris. For anybody who didn't see our stories, Chris was like, "Oh, I'm in Phoenix for a thing. I'm going to come down and check out the shop." And then ended up helping Brad and I move like all of the really heavy car shit. I apologize, but it's like such a big help.
You were like, well, we're moving shop, and so I got to carve out time. And I was like, oh, I'll just help you. And you're like, don't. And it's like, bitch, take my help. like, let's hang out, and this is fine.
It was awesome, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was, and you got to see both shops, which is cool.
Yeah. We found, we didn't find, you guys found that sweet old school nudie mag. That's,
oh my goodness. I don't know if I've ever told that story on here, but
can we, is that family friendly?
I'll keep it as vague as possible. So when Brad and we moved into our old shop, and it was a woodworking shop before us. And so there was just a like 1/2-inch layer of sawdust everywhere, especially over the office that we used for inspection. And so every time you would clean in there the next day, you know, if there was windy outside or anything shook the ceiling tiles, it would just be a fine rain of sawdust. And so I want to say, I don't know, probably 6 years ago or something, we went up there and pulled all the insulation off the office because that was just trapping all the sawdust, and cleaned up there. And while we were up there, found this like European nudie mag that like one of the woodworkers must have thrown up there, and we kept it for posterity. And at the end of moving out of the shop, threw it back up on top of the office.
It was well worn too. Like that was the craziest thing. Is like it was well worn. It's like somebody was like walking around with this in their back pocket for like a while. Like somebody needs to relax. It was disgusting. And I think it's as old as Easton.
yeah, that was the other thing we figured out, which was hilarious.
God, so fucking funny.
And then we did the landlord special and sprayed all of the walls with white, which was crazy too, because Brad, me, and his girlfriend were all doing it the last night before we had to move out. And we sprayed all the walls, and I was like, man, it is so much brighter in here.
Right.
And Brad was like, no, it's just dark outside. Like, that's why you think that. And then he went in the next morning to like turn over keys and was like, dude, it is brighter. I was like, yeah, we should have done this years ago.
Yeah, it's one of those things you don't think about, but it's like, oh yeah, the walls being like white and reflective probably does have a nice reflective property to it.
Oh yeah. Yeah, not yellowed and gross.
Speaking of lights, have you started replacing lights yet?
Not yet. I have been doing a lot of research, and it turns out I learned some things. So I was just going to replace all of the offices, and actually all of the shop are T8 fluorescent light bulbs. The ones in the shop, my friend who runs Jarvis Lighting gave me some lights to put up in there. I was asking him questions, and he was like, oh, you should buy ours. Like, not anything about it. He was like, yeah, they're well priced and they're good. It's like, okay, cool. And then I was doing research on fluorescent retrofits for LED and stumbled across a research article from the Department of Energy that actually kind of changed the way I was going about it. Because like all of our bulbs are 32 watt T8s, and I think there's 5 or 6 per fixture. I think there's 105 in the entire shop or something. Wow. So like whatever we spend, it's going to be $600 to $1,000 in retrofit. And I was going to buy was it like a 14 watt or a 13 watt bulb that said like, oh, it is a 32 watt replacement. And then I found this Department of Energy article that kind of went into that more and was like, LEDs are very efficient power wise, but they put out significantly less lumens per watt, I think it is. Than a fluorescent. And so they said like, yeah, these things say that a 14 watt is an equivalent of a 32 watt, but so a few things to consider. First,
is LED how far bulbs away they are from you.
Well, that and LED bulbs are only straight down. So they're a strip of light in a tube. And so you get all of it down instead of some of it up into the fixture and back down.
Yeah.
So they're more efficient as a fixture that way, but the bulbs themselves are not as bright as a fluorescent. So they said minimum get something that has, I want to say it was 2,200 lumens to match a 32 watt bulb's output.
Yeah.
And so I ended up having to go up to 17 or 18 watt LEDs.
Right. So
that kind of ruined my whole plan. Like I had a full cart at Home Depot. I was like, oh, cool. These are perfect. I had found ones that they operated with or without the ballast being removed. So like I could have swapped all of them and then gone through and removed the ballast over time. And I was like, dope, this is perfect. And then, they turned out that they were 1,600 lumens or something like that. So I would have lost a lot of light in all these offices, which I can't afford to.
Yeah. And so you ended up with, so in the shop, you have those big round ones that you're going to try. And then did you end up buying new lights already? Or did you
So those round ones are going to replace all of the halogen or all of the fixtures in the shop area itself.
Yeah.
And we might end up just adding more. Like I think we're never going to, what Brad and I have decided is that we are going to add enough of those lights in the shop area that we won't save any power in the shop area.
Right.
But we'll double or triple the amount of lumens in there for the same wattage.
That's cool. So that was going to be my next question is like, are you going to be a little more strategic about the placement of the lights? Like above the machine, like where the operator is or like where you're going to stand and stuff like that. Because right now they're kind of haphazard, obviously. And you could be, I guess when you put them up, you're probably going to want to put them in different spots so that they're more beneficial. But if you're putting a shitload more of them, then I guess it doesn't matter necessarily.
Yeah, I think we're just going to double the amount of fixtures. So we're going to go from 8 to 16.
Yeah.
And like currently the fixtures are suspended by 2 cables that are on the beams. And I think what we're going to do is just drop each of those chains down and have a fixture from those.
Cool.
So like it won't be any more strategic. It'll just be double.
Yeah.
Which should be fine.
That's a strategy in and of itself right there. Yeah. Just more.
Just overwhelm the light. So I think that's what we're going to do. I got to buy some, and we're going to have to rent a cherry picker or something.
Right. Yeah. Sunbelt Rentals, baby.
Right. Yeah. Well, I found out even Home Depot rents them, and they'll like drop them off for you and pick them up. And I'm like, cool. I don't want to have to get
that's even better.
Truck. Yeah. So we'll do that and then get all that done soon. Because there's some areas of the shop that are like really dark too.
Yeah. You're like, interesting. What was going on in this corner?
Yeah, like I've been using my flashlight a lot, my pocket flashlight, and I've got one of those bendy neck ones from Freelux too.
Okay.
Whatever, I don't remember what he calls them, but I use that a lot. Like I'll stick it to a machine and, use it to inspect parts or something like that. And like, I don't want to come across like the shop is dim. It is just like much darker than we're used to because we added, I think I counted 20 additional plug-in LED light fixtures at the old shop.
Yeah. There was good light in there for sure. But
yeah.
So you spent enough money already. It's not like a dire need. It's functional. And then speaking of light even more, how is the light in the Hermle?
It's so good. It is so good.
Yeah.
So it's the same Waldman lights that Yamazin used to sell on the Brothers.
Okay.
And there's 2 of them in the front, pocketed in behind the doors. And because the whole inside is stainless, it reflects it like crazy. And like the volume inside is not that big. Like the machine travels itself and the volume in there are about the same as the F600. Actually, I think there was probably less volume in there too, because the tool changer wall and the back of the machine is just behind the spindle. Whereas on the F, like the entire X axis is inside the travel of the machine or like the housing of the machine.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's super, super bright. I have 0 complaints about that. Both Brad and I have, complimented and commented on it. They're like, oh, you can see everything in here.
Yeah. Has Brad programmed for the Hermle yet? Or is he going?
No.
Is there are you guys going to have like a division like duties there? Or is it just like right now you're going to take the charge of learning it and then show him how to do it afterwards?
So we still have a seat for the training that I went to with Hermle. So I think the plan is I'm going to onboard it, get the post dialed, get the workflow dialed, and all of that. And then whenever he wants to, and we can afford to have him out of town for a week, we'll send him off to training. And then when he comes back, I can onboard him from there.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool, actually, because then he can use the training right away. And
not only that, but like he'll have very pointed questions because going back to what you were saying about your horizontal training, I love how you did it with like sample programs and all of that, because we did the training from Hermle is great, but it's mostly focused on like getting you accustomed to how Heidenhain does things. Like, okay, we're going to hand program all this stuff on the simulator to do these parts. And I feel now like it was a little light on like how to operate the machine.
Yeah.
So like, and like, I think we talked about all these things, but we didn't emphasize them. So like loading a program from USB, because I don't have the machine networked yet. I was like, how do I do this again? Like it took me a million button presses, and like, I'm still not sure that I'm doing it the right way, but I am doing it. So
yeah. And this is where we hammer home training on site versus training at a facility is it's hard for them to be like, what is your workflow going to be? And like, blah, 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 and then try and tune that for you. But, and like the practical example of this is I started the week with like 6 guys, and I ended the week with 3. because they just kept getting, like, one of the guys was the first shift supervisor who I got for like a day and a half, 2 days, and he just got pulled because he was needed, and then that was it, and he was done. And then another guy, like, he started, and then we got to a certain point, and it's like, all right, well, this is as far as I can go because I got to go set up another machine, and that and then one guy was out because a doctor's appointment on Friday or something. But like, you go through, it's like, what do you need to operate, to like make parts for you? Like, I need to know, like, how do you set this? How do you do this? How do you do this? So I can show your guys how you need to operate the machine to accomplish that task. And it's an interesting approach, but like, it works, but like, it's so hard for that guy to do that. Though it is kind of silly to think about, like, not having you put your hands on the control. Like, well, one of the guys I was training was getting frustrated because of how much we were like starting over, but he also, by the end, could do everything just doing it. Like,
right.
He could put programs on, he could take programs off, he could load offsets, he could load tools, he could do whatever. And I like made some M codes for them to make the machine, G and M codes to like make the machine easier to use and less like button clicky, because like it wanted a lot more. But yeah. It'll be good for Brad to see you like operating the Hermle, seeing the pitfalls that you have. And then he could ask questions for your specific workflow. Show me how to do this. I want to do this.
And to be completely fair to them, I'm 99% positive they showed us how to load from USB, but it was not like a focus thing. Like I would have, for me, it would have been better is every time we went over to the machine to run a piece of code, if they had us load it from USB, so we knew the workflow. Yeah,
that's what I like. That's what I mean too. And it's like muscle memory, just like, all right, we're going to do this again. And it's like, again, but then by the end of it, this thing where you're like, how do I do this? Oh, I missed a step. To you're just doing it and seeing that progression. Then you go back and now it's a month later or a couple weeks later. You're not like questioning how to do it. And
they did a really good job of teaching us the tool table stuff, though. Like, I felt fairly confident in that. Though last night I scared the shit out of myself because you have to give the laser a radial offset for where it's going to measure the end of the tool, because like there's a gash in a tool, that it'll start reading.
Yeah,
and so you'll get or on a thread mill or something like that. Like there's a reason you would want it to be off center when it's measuring the length.
Right.
And I accidentally put in the diameter of the tool and not the radius. Like typically the value is the radius minus 0.5 millimeter, 20 thou.
Yeah.
And I put in the diameter minus 20 thou.
So it was going to miss the laser
right past the tool and hit the holder. And like, thankfully the tool was short enough that it didn't hit the bottom of the laser.
Yeah.
But dude, I was
from experience, that's not a fun situation.
Right. Yeah. It was a extremely cheap lesson.
Yeah.
I immediately saw it. Like I stopped it, but I was terrified. And I was like, I cannot believe I just did that.
Yeah. And like, thankfully you were watching it and you're still in that mode of watching it and understanding that. Cause like, man, just think about if you were like, you're like, all right, you like get to that point where you're just like, I'm comfortable. You do that mistake. You walk away while it touches. It gets through the cycle and you're like, cool. Then you go to run your program and it's like,
yeah. And that's why I really want to look into a CSV output from Fusion that like fills those fields automatically. Cause like the computer is not going to mess up dividing the diameter by 2, but Dylan will apparently at 7:00 at night.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Is that what the point of the cascading posts are for? Is for shit like that?
I think so.
Yeah.
And for the longest time, I was told that cascading posts were broken.
Right.
But I recently heard that that's not the case anymore. So
very cool.
I don't know. I'll talk to Phil because I'm using DSI for my post, and I'll talk to Phil and see what he thinks of it. And like I said, I need to play with the CSV behavior when you import it and kind of figure out what kind of things I can absorb, like whether I want to reset all the tools or if there's an easy way to only output things that aren't in the machine. Like it would be super cool is if I could read the tool table on the machine and then Fusion could just say, okay, anything that's not in here, output the CSV. But I don't know how feasible that is.
Yeah. Well, feasibility, I guess there's a difference between like feasibility and effort, I suppose. Cause like at a certain point, I think like anything is possible, baby.
It's for sure possible, but it's like, is that a Protium thing or is that a Hadrian thing?
Like, yeah, exactly.
Do I need VC backing to get this done, or can I accomplish this with DSI? Like that's the difference.
Some people over there, like just be like, hey, how do you do this?
Yeah. So, but overall, it's been fantastic. To Matt's question, I haven't been doing any conversational. I don't really intend to.
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
Yeah. That stuff is always funny. It's like, I need to know how to do this, and it's like, why? Like I've been asked that question, and it's like, what is going on here that you need to know how to do this? And sometimes it's just like silly stuff. It's like that's just how we've always done it. I'm like,
right,
all right, I guess.
And to be completely fair, the conversational in Heidenhain is crazy powerful. Like that is one thing you learn in the class is like, oh man, you can do like adaptive style toolpaths straight out of conversational. You can do all this stuff, but
it's basically like a Herco, right?
Arguably significantly more powerful, I think, in terms of the conversational, but well, maybe not anymore, but at least, on its base level, it seems very powerful, but it's just, I've got my preset set in CAM. I've got templates for it. It works very well. I don't see any reason to try to do any conversational right now.
Right. I think basically got all the Hermle stuff out of the way.
I think so as well.
Yeah. I mean, not out of the way. We love talking about it, and it's going to be a topic for a while.
For a while.
Yeah. Which is dope. We can hit Simon's real quick. Tattoo update.
Any new tattoos?
I got, I don't remember what the last one. I mean, like, I think the last tattoo update I did was after I got my hand done.
Yeah, I think so too.
Or like my throat and my hand or whatever. And then I've went back to New York a couple times for like some projects or whatever. And the guy that did my hands is there, and he's also the guy that did my stomach from London, but now he's in Brooklyn. Mike Boyd, shout out to Mike Boyd. Good luck, NYC. Does fantastic work, and he's done 2 more for me, which is I have like an eaten apple on the back of my leg, which I like a lot. And I think I had just got the woodpecker when we were moving.
Yeah,
I think it was pretty fresh.
Yeah, it's pretty fresh. I like the problem is that because we text so much, like I remember you showing it to me. I just don't remember when that was.
Yeah. The woodpecker is fairly new. I thought it was at the end of January, early February or something like that. So yeah, it's about a month old. That's like the newest one. I like that a lot. And then I don't know. I'll next time I'm in New York City, I'll go get another one. And
awesome.
Yeah, just till I'm full, I guess. Except for my face. Somebody was like, because 3 of the guys that I worked with at Methods now all work at Morris Group. And so it's kind of like I worked with 2 of them while I was there. And they're like, one of them, he was like, the neck's kind of aggressive, but at least it's not on your face. It's like, yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Let's see. Last week's guest, Graham Francis, said, first off, he would have paid extra to avoid the Patreon shout out. And I left this in here because if you join the Patreon and you don't want a shout out, just let me know. Just shoot me a message.
It's funny because I told him, he called me before he was on the episode because he's like, how's this going to go? And should I join the Patreon and whatever? And I'm like, he's going to join the Patreon because it'd be funny if you joined the Patreon before, and he shouted you out while you're on the episode, and I don't think apparently he didn't believe me that was going to happen.
Yeah. So it just let me know if you don't want the shout out. honestly, like I struggle to give the patrons value, and so I thought that was an easy one. But again, if you don't want it, just tell me. And then his real question was, have either of you played around with digital tap testing to measure machining dynamics? Which I haven't, but I've always been very interested in it.
Yeah, same. Like never messed around with it at all. It seems interesting. I feel like if you're at that point, you're probably kind of balling, you know?
Well, so I tried to get this going at my last job. MSC has a program where they bought one of those companies.
Yeah.
And if you buy enough of their tools, they will do it for free.
That is true. Oh, that's true.
I don't know how many, like, I don't know what that limit is. Like, I don't know if you have to say like, oh, if you can get this working, I'll buy 50. I don't know if it's 100. I don't know where it's at.
It's a lot. And really what they're trying to do with that from like, now that you mentioned the MSC thing that like unlocked a memory, which is they were doing this at a customer or like customer adjacent or whatever, where they're trying to get you to buy different tools, more or less. So they'll be like, you're like, they'll come in, they'll measure what you currently have and be like, we could make that better by changing to these tools. You know what I mean?
These AccuPro tools.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, they have like their like cutting, like their pseudo salesmen / apps guys, like metal cutting specialists or whatever. They'll like run that test for you and like, we can shave X amount of time by reducing the vibration of this, that, and the other by changing these tools and yada, yada. It seems interesting. The only way that I've seen it employed so far is as a sales tactic.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, and like the closest thing I've seen to, or well, it's not even digital tap testing. This is just totally different in terms of machine dynamics is, there was a Methods customer that was cutting glass with like ultrasonic drills, and it was like the machine was like custom. It was a custom built Yazda, so it took like 2 years to get or something. And then the machine was like dynamically leveled kind of all the time to make sure that it was like dampened and stuff, because they're doing like, if like legit, it's kind of one of those things where your workpiece is very fragile because it's glass. So like if you mess up, it just blows up, you know, and shatters. So,
that's cool though.
Yeah, pretty interesting. It seems neat.
Let's see. Last one from the Patreon. Demi asked, he'd love to hear more about how we're both using Obsidian. He's considering trying it at work, but he's yet to jump in. And so we've covered this a fair bit.
Right.
I can kind of go over a few things I've added to mine. Let me pull it up.
Yeah. And I use it more through Jason at X2. He has spent a tremendous amount of time in Obsidian. Like, I think I sent you pictures, and he fired up that Slack channel, which we haven't really utilized, but like he has gone like crazy with it. And it's really cool because like I have Kanban cards and checkboxes and all these like linked tasks and yada yada, and the cluster looks really rad. And like honestly, like r/Obsidian on Reddit is like a pretty crazy resource, because you can do some like, people are doing some really insane stuff. Like it looks like nothing, like stock Obsidian has a look, and then people have like backgrounds and it looks like Asana or like Monday.com or whatever. And it's just like a lot of like plugins. There's a ton of plugins that kind of do anything. Like there's one that I want to use, which is like it's just a heat map calendar. So if you have like times blocked off, it just like at a glance is like, oh, these are the days that I'm going to be doing things, or like something's due or whatever. There's some really, I guess like all that to say, it is a tool, like most any tool, that works for you as much as you're willing to put into it. Right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So like right now I'm using it. Let's see. My major nodes are machines. Oh yeah. So machines is my major one. And then like off of that, I have every single one of the machines in the shop. And then like off of the Hermle, because this is why I started using it more in depth, I have, work holding, I have full node that has its own sub nodes for when I was at training and all the questions I needed to get answered. 5-axis strategy, full fusion sim. And in those, I have basically all the information I've gathered on that. So like I've got in Fusion Sim, I've got my machine model, I have my post, I've got all this stuff, all the notes. I bring it up constantly, like in the tooling table in the Hermle, you can call these tools whatever you want. And so I came up with a naming scheme, and I'm daily referring to this thing because it's human readable up to a point, but it also like takes a little bit of decoding, and so I keep forgetting what the order is that I've put all this stuff in, and so I'll pull that up and be like, okay, this is how I name my tool. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
How did you decide to name your tool? That was a question I was going to ask. So we're running it back a little bit.
I'm not sure I'm happy with it, but I'm sticking to it for now.
Yeah.
Let me pull that up. It is all right. It's in Hermle. It is in.
One of the cool things that Jason and I haven't yet got to with Obsidian is like you can like host websites or whatever through it.
Right.
So you can have your notes available to like everybody and edit that in like HTML and like get really like sexy with it. So if you have like an internal wiki or something that everybody uses, you can, instead of having like doing the Obsidian business thing and all the sync stuff and blah, blah, blah for your whole company, you can just like fire up the notes to the cloud or whatever. And it's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So I pulled it up currently. So you get, I think it's 30 characters with Heidenhain for the tool name. And so right now it is, the first two letters are what type of tool. So like EM for end mill, DR for drill, whatever. Then it's underscore, and then it's either I or M for if it's imperial or metric.
Okay,
and
that.
Then 3 digits for the diameter of the tool. So like I250 would be a 1/4 inch end mill.
Yeah.
Or a quarter. EM underscore I250 would be a 1/4 inch end mill. And then it's underscore, and then it's either CR or TA. CR is corner radius, TA is tip angle, and then it's 3 digits. So 30 thou, CR 030, tip angle 140, TA 140.
Yeah. How does that work for like a face mill that has like, that's like 2 inches? Would you just do like 200?
So I don't have anything over an inch yet. That was the first thing that I discovered yesterday when I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, I need an extra digit there.
Yeah. That was my first thought immediately, because it's like, I guess I've lived in a bigger world.
Yeah. I mean, I don't use face mills in the Brothers at all. Like I told you this a while ago. Right. It takes a little longer, but I don't have to worry about blending and yada, yada, yada. But anyway, I think I can rob a digit from another category and put it back over there.
Yeah.
After that, it's underscore, and then it's flute length, 4 digits, underscore, 4 digits for length to holder, underscore, 4 digits for the type of holder. So like ER16, ER32, PG15, and then no underscore. And then it is the millimeters gauge length of the holder. So like a 100 millimeter tool is 10, a 120 millimeter tool is 12.
Gotcha. Okay. Could you drop a letter off of the holder designation? Because like you basically just use ERs and PGs and just go to like E16 and like P15.
Yes, that's one area I was thinking of dropping. I was also like, this is another thing that I realized and I didn't think about when I did it, is like I have the I and the M designation for inch and metric.
Yeah.
And then I realized as I was loading a 6 millimeter ball, that I put the flute length and the length to holder in inch. And so I was mixing units within a tool name and I hated it. And so what I'm considering is just getting rid of the I and M and just making everything imperial for now until we make a switch or don't. And then that would gain me then it would be a 4 digit for diameter.
Yeah, that is something like RegoFix does, where you can very clearly tell what is inch and what is metric, because it's like, oh, the metric thing is like 3,000, very clean number. And like the 1/8 inch is like some random fucking number.
Yeah, 3175. You're like,
yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
Makes sense. I mean, it does make sense because it's just the metric equivalent of that, more or less.
Right. And we don't use a ton of metric tooling, so I'm kind of considering just dropping that and making it 4-digit diameter value after the tool designation.
236 is pretty obvious that it's a 6 millimeter. You're not you're like, oh, what could that be?
Yeah. And I'm not using, like, the only area that would get weird is all of the drills that we use, because we do use a ton of metric drills.
Yeah.
And I think that's the only place that I would want the M. And so, like, I'm considering maybe
it's a little dynamic.
Yeah, I'm considering keeping the M for drills, because I don't think I'm ever going to use a 1-inch drill.
Yeah.
At least not right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you're into, like, it's hard to say because, like, your machine is, like, so much bigger and beefier that I can definitely see you, like, in the future doing, like, probably not from, like, a tooling standpoint because you only have 30 tools right now, but getting into, like a little bit of, like, maybe, like, manifold work or something, you know, like, where you're gonna be like, I guess I should probably I could punch this with the 1-inch drill.
Right. Yeah.
Especially you have HSK 63. Right. Yeah. It's a little bit beefier than BT30.
Just a wee bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, that machine we've discovered is basically just a triple machine. Like, it weighs as much as all three of our brothers. It has the same amount of coolant as all three of our brothers. Right. I think it has more horsepower than all three spindles put together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just crazy.
Yeah. It's hilarious. I mean, the tool holders make the BT30s look like toys. That was the thing too. Like, going back to, like, the very beginning of this episode, where, like, in Dan's Swiss shop, like, because the Swiss stuff, like, is so tiny, it's like every tool is just the most adorable version you've ever seen because it's just so small. It's like, what is like, these, like, feel like displays or, like, something you would give to a child, and it's adorable.
Like, what is this, a lathe for ants?
Yeah, dude, the RO4 is, like, it is so cute. So you're like, and it's like, oh, these are the remnants, and it's like a 1 millimeter tube or something like that. It's like, that's absurd.
That's
like,
crazy.
What are you doing here? And it's like, he's like, it is adorable until you have to use it, and then it sucks.
Oh, that's hilarious. Let's see. Rapid City CNC says he thinks it would be an interesting talk about what machines you guys think are the best, reliable, longest lasting, and then the opposite.
That's like such a hard question. The one that comes to mind just right off the bat, obviously, is robo drills. Like, those things are designed specifically to last forever and be very easy to maintain. The reason why they have such a limited like, product line is they just don't want that. Like, they don't do an integrated 5th axis because it's more moving parts. Just put the table on the table, because you can replace, like, the X-axis ball screw in, like, 2 hours and be up and running. And I know there's a shop in Phoenix that has, like, old mates, like the really old RoboDrill mates that have only cut Inconel their entire life, and they're, like, 20 or 30 years old, and they just keep going, and they have those things, like, really dialed. They're very reliable. I mean, any, like, quote unquote high-end Japanese machine lasts a long time. Like, one of the first things I did at Methods was work on a 20-year-old Nakamura that they had crashed the shit out of, and they were slowly replacing the Nakamuras with Haas's. But the entire time that we were there working on them, like, every single day, like, literally every day, a Haas spun its belts, because all that 90% of what they were cutting was Inconel. So this was a different shop, and they were replacing their tanky boxway Nakamuras with Haas lathes. And it's like, they don't have the low end torque, and they don't have the balls to cut that. But it's one of those things where, like, oh, on paper, those machines are fairly similar. And this one costs way, way less. So we'll just replace it with that. Easy peasy. But that thing, when we got it running, like it ran great. They run great. They run forever. Easton can attest to that. He has that old one that just kind of runs and runs and runs. Matsura, another good one. Like I have a 2001 Matsura, and thing holds size all day, every day. And like it's pretty well maintained. Like I've only had it for a little bit, but it rips. On the opposite end of that, I would say probably like Haas, those things, but those things are specifically designed to be disposable. They are commodity machines. Like,
yeah.
So it's like when it's kind of goes back to like you buy a high-end Japanese machine or a high-end German machine like your Hermle, or like people with like the old Kerns, like you treat them well, they'll last forever. Like that, the machines that you have, Brother and Hermle, are designed to last forever. So as long as, you had the F600 and you had the Kitty that were really old, and that's how you started your shop. Or was it not the F600, the TC?
No, we had the TC, yeah.
Yeah,
well,
the TC.
And that was what I was going to say too. Like I fully agree with the Robo Drill, and I'd put Brother right there along with him. And like there's a reason that Foxconn and all of these Chinese shops buy Brothers and Robo Drills.
Right.
And it's because they are in the worst working environment, that a CNC can be in, and they still last a product cycle.
Yeah.
Like just being beat to shit, and like they're still good. And like at that point, yeah, they toss the machine and buy a new one or whatever. But like if a Brother or a Robo Drill can last 5 years, 4 years, whatever, just being absolutely beat on, like if I just do a little bit of maintenance and take care of it, like it'll. The TC we bought from Dennis, and at that time it was 18 years old.
Yeah.
And like we didn't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
Ever. Like we replaced the Z-axis way cover, and we put a roof on it and cleaned out the fan on the spindle. And I think those are the only maintenance items we ever did on it.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. So that's pretty much like if you buy a low end machine for price, it's probably going to last like a low end machine for price. It feels like so obvious, but people do this all the time, which is they just buy the wrong, like you buy a Haas and you expect it to be like, oh, on paper, or like you buy a Doosan and expect it to be like a Hermle or something. And you're like, wow, this machine that costs 4 times as less isn't as good. Right.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're telling me your Civic isn't as good on the track as the Ferrari? Wait, what?
Interesting. Yeah. It's like fascinating.
Yeah.
What a weird thing to consider, but like, yeah.
Yeah. And the older Japanese machines, I think, like you said, are absolute tanks. Like we had Kitamura's in the first shop I worked in. The machine that my boss used the most was a Jig Center from 83.
Whoa.
And it still ran parts like within, I don't want to say within tenths, but like fairly tight. Like in that thing, we had to service every now and again. Like we'd have to send out a servo amp or something, or do some maintenance on it or whatever. But like, dude, it was from 83. Like it outdated me.
Right.
And I was like making parts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's awesome. And there's a number of people in the instant machinist community that have like old ass Matsuras that are just like cranking away, just cranking and cranking and cranking. And it's incredible. It's incredible.
Oh yeah.
And then there was another one. No, I lost it. Forget it. Moving on.
Moving on. Let's see. Regniloff Linus asks, tools that impressed us with performance or made life easier.
Yeah. And he gave an example of like probes or 0 point. And probes definitely make life easier. It kind of blows me away. That was like one of the most interesting things about doing this horizontal training is like at a certain point, you just assume a machine is going to have a probe based on its age. And they had a tool setter, but not a probe. And it's like, okay, cool. So we just have to do things a little bit differently here, but they were used to that. The probes definitely make life easier. I find it really funny when you have people that are like, I don't trust a probe, or I don't trust tool setters, and it's like, right, your edge finder is going to be better. Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
I remember having to prove to the older guys at my last job that the probe was better or as good at what they were doing. Because like there was a part that I was doing some re-engineering on, and like the current process had them load it and then indicate every single part. And we made hundreds of these a month.
Yeah.
Indicate every single one under 0.2, I think it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, we can probe that.
Yeah.
Like we can probe that. And like it took, I want to say he double checked the probe the first like 50 parts or something. He was like, all right, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Like,
yep.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. And as long as we maintain the probe, it will still be that way. It's when people, like I've had like, oh, I replaced, we broke the tip, but the tip broke. And it's like, oh, did you recalibrate? And it's like, what? Like, and it's like the probe sucks ever since it broke and we replaced it. And it's like, you did recalibrate it, right? And they're like, what do you mean? Like, so it's like, it's just warbling around. And you're like, tight. And like 0 point system, there's always things. I was having this conversation with Graham too, about just like workflow stuff where it's a little thing that you do all the time that you're like, that because it's little, you're okay with it. And you're like, but then you do it enough that you're like, I could probably just build this into something so that it's done for me. And that's like, I don't know, like a configuration in Fusion or SolidWorks or whatever. For me, it's like when I would build proposals, I would generate the like graphs and stuff every time, and like the timeline stuff. And then I'm like, I could probably just automate this so that I just punch in some numbers and then I just have to copy paste it. And that was like massive, it doesn't take a lot of time to generate it, but also it's more time than just copy pasting it and not having to think about it. And that's like a less sexy answer, but like just automation tools, I guess, and using more advanced features of the softwares that you use every day, like on a control or whatever. Like you can do cool stuff on, like the brother has more stuff that you can do. I think that like with folders and the hotkeys and things like that, that is like a total game changer for how your like quality of life is. Is it necessary? No. But if I do this thing all the time, I can just like on a brother, right, like assign a key to be able to get to that thing quickly.
Yeah.
And you're like, sick.
When 0 points, I think that they become even more valuable the more axes you add too. Like It was so awesome. Brad had not used our 4th axis trunnion workflow yet.
Yeah.
At the old shop, and we had a part come across last week or the week before that needed a stupid side hole, and he was like, oh, I'll figure it out. Like, let's do this. And he's like, oh, let me check the center of rotation first. Checked it after the move. Totally still perfect where it was. Threw the 4th axis trunnion on the lang plate that was still on the 4th.
Yeah.
And was off to the races. Like it literally, there was no,
right.
Do I need to dial this in?
Yeah.
Where is my work coordinate? It's like, nope, G56 is already set. Just run it, dude. Load the material and run it. And I was like, cool. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Where if you had like something else, you're just like, oh, bust out the indicator, bust out this probing, blah, blah, blah. It's like boring.
Yeah. Well, just a waste of time. And like on the Hermle, I've run 3 or 4 different ops now, and they're all coming from my 0 point setting.
You're right.
So it's like, it's there. It's already done. I haven't probed once. Like I have the probe, but like I don't need to.
Yeah. Cause once it's, set it and forget it, baby. Hell yeah.
I'm trying to think of other things. PG has been like that for us. Like it's super expensive, but like I don't worry about run out or pulling a tool out of a holder anymore. Like that has not crossed my mind in quite some time, where it's like, oh, maybe I should slow this down because I might pull it out of the ER32. And it's like, no, I'll just load it. Like,
yeah, just run it. Oh, a silly one that like these guys that came up kind of because of the probing or this training was they don't have a probe, and they're like, we'd like a probe. It's like, right, but that's like thousands of dollars, and all their centers come off of holes. And I'm like, oh, you should just get a coax indicator. And they're like, what's that? And you're like, whoa. Like,
oh,
it's like,
buddy.
yeah, it's like, this is the poor man's probe. You just kind of like jam it in this hole. Because we were trying to use an Indicol, but it was very clear that the Indicol was bent. When we moved like probe up, probe down, and it was like 3/16 of an inch off in the tip. And you're like, well, we're not dialing anything in with this. So like, we need a different solution. And you can buy this. It's not the perfect one, but like, you can get an AccuSize coax indicator off Amazon for like $130. Or you could buy the Heimer one for like $700.
Right. Oh, that reminds me too. Speaking of Indicols, because I hate Indicols with a fiery passion. Sure. I hate that stupid C-clamp. I hate everything about them.
Yep.
Edge Technology Products makes a indicator arm.
Okay.
That is shank mounted. You just throw it in a 3/8 tool holder, and the arm is built as such that it is always at 90 degrees.
Yeah.
Like, it is beefy. It is awesome. I bought one of those years ago, and I think we've got 2 or 3 in the shop now because I won't use any other indicator arm. Like, it's it's so much better.
That's
like
awesome.
I occasionally like will see an Indicol and be like, you know, get the shudder of like, oh, I remember the days like
instinctively just grab it and huck it across the shop, and you're like, oh God, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's one of those things that like is super variable. Like, yeah, it's super cool that you can rotate every single joint to get around something weird, but like, for 99% of my probing in a CNC, I don't need that. I need something that is true to the spindle and straight up and down, and like I can figure out where my error is.
Yeah, that was like the weirdest thing about that is like, because of where the hole is, you have to like extend it out really far because it like is immediately next to a shelf. And when he initially set it up, we could only like 3-point it. And it's like, what is going on? And then as you know, in a horizontal, when you start extending things out, now you have to deal with droop and all that. And it's like, for the birds. And then we ended up just like kind of hacking a solution together like that, where they had like a thing with like a little stem and a dovetail where you could like where you can crimp it or like clamp it and then put that in a holder. And like that worked well enough, but it was like, we're like grabbing on like this much of like a 1/4 inch of the shank that's in the ER. And you're like, oh God, this is this is a mess.
I'll send you the link to it after we're done here. Cause it's honestly like, it's maybe $100 if that,
Nice.
And like, yeah, it's made in China and you know, whatever, but like it's the best one I've found so far for indicator holders.
That's awesome.
And then I don't know about like tools that have impressed me with performance or made life easier, but the one thing that like now that we're starting to grow a little bit more and this is like, you know, lean built, whatever, that kind of stuff, incremental, but like just buy duplicates of stuff and have it where you need it. Like you've seen our shop now, we're fairly spread out.
Yeah.
We used to have one place for gloves in the old shop, like one glove dispenser. And so the other day I was like, I'll just buy a glove dispenser for every machine.
Whoa, yeah.
I'll stick it on the side. Like they're magnetic. Like why am I why am I walking halfway across the shop to get a pair of gloves? This is so stupid.
Or like just having to like go look for it, period. You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're just like raging because you can't find them.
Oh man. This whole move has been a education in keeping my calm. Of like, I just saw this thing. Where the hell did it go?
Yeah.
And even since you were at the shop, like the new shop now looks very clean. Like we have a lot of empty floor space now.
Nice.
I bought a few more of those shelving units that we put together for out on the shop floor. And like, you know, it's starting to feel like we've turned this house into a home kind of thing. Like it's, yeah. So it's little stuff like that I think really makes your life easier. Like you said, anything that like you do all the time, try to fix that stuff. Like templates in Fusion have made it super easy. Like learning this new machine, there's so much to learn. Having a template that I had set up prior to it with all my work holding and my WCS is already set and all that stuff has been a lifesaver and a brain saver for sure. Because I'm just not stressed of like, oh, I got to figure out all this too. Like I'm focused on the things I need to learn.
Nice. That's awesome. Sick. So, last 2 questions.
Yeah. What have you been researching this week, dude?
Most of my research this week has been a lot of O-rings for some design stuff, just sizes and shit like that. And the Fanuc tool manager or tool management option, which is not tool life management, which is basically available on every Fanuc control, like out of the gate. This is tool management, which gives you like it unlocks like this suite of system variables. So now the machine knows what tool is in the spindle at all times and the associated H and D. So like it doesn't wipe out like a T value or whatever when you're doing like if you pre-call tools and stuff like that. And so it allows you to do like some interesting things. I think you have to like set up some programs and stuff, but I was having these guys do the basic version of that and using that and then using those system variables in the tool touch off and tool call macros so that they didn't have to, because the way that the macros kind of came in, you had to type in like M200 TH value. But if we just set up the tool management page, I just in the background have it look at what that tool, what the T and the D or the H are that they assign to it. And if it wasn't there, it would alarm out so that it would tell them. So then all they have to type in is M200 and it's just less clicky and much easier to use. And then, yeah, like as a result, like make like if you're going to change a tool, be able to be like, oh, bring it to me in the door. And then if you have like an M1 on the line to bring it to you to the door, then it will prompt you to replace it and then auto measure it just all based on what tool is in the spindle currently. Stuff like that. That's what I've been researching.
Neat.
Yeah. What about you? More lights?
Well, yeah, I feel like this episode was what has Dylan been researching, but
yeah, I mean that's a good point. Like,
yeah, lights, obviously, just like Heidenhain and Hermle stuff, like crazy. I'm still trying to dial in my post with Phil, so learning about Hermle's specific smoothing cycle 326 versus like the Heidenhain cycle 32. Just syntax of like what a Heidenhain program is. 5-axis toolpaths, like I told you in one of our group chats, like I kind of feel like I'm just rolling dice with like these lead and mean numbers until like until simulation says like no collisions.
Yeah, and you're like,
and like, cool. I don't know if that's the right way to do it or if there's an easier way to do it. I did start using. I mean, I'm an idiot for not using it, but there's a collision avoidance checkbox. That then uses your holder values, like your avoid holder, avoid shaft, and avoid something else, and like we'll push the toolpath to do that. I wasn't doing that
hey,
for some of these.
That's how you learn, baby.
Yeah. So yeah, just a lot of like, how quickly can I get this machine up and running kind of stuff. There's still other stuff I need to do some more digging on in the manuals and stuff, like the conveyor. I don't know if it's a code in my post right now that's triggering it, but the conveyor turns on with every operation or every program, and then you can stop it from the control, or you can stop it. There's like a black e-stop on the conveyor itself.
Okay.
So it's not an e-stop. It is a, hey, I'm changing bins, I need you to stop for a second button, basically. But if you trigger either one of those, like I was just triggering it because I was like, I don't need this on, and there's a lot of coolant carry out, so I've just been like flooding my chip bin. But after what feels like maybe 30 minutes, it will stop the entire machine and say, conveyor has been off for too long.
Oh, interesting.
Like, oh, damn it.
Yeah. That's kind of nice.
It's super nice, because especially if you're running lights out or something like that, like the last thing you want to do is turn it off to change the chip bin and then like flood the machine.
Yeah.
But I need to figure out, like, can I just turn it off with an M code or have a flip in my post that keeps it off when I'm not making that many chips.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That's pretty much it though.
Cool.
All right. So last question. What are you doing to better yourself?
Yeah, I'm just trying to forcing myself to sleep and make sure that I get good sleep, because that is like that it's super important to like, sustained functionality and like cognizance or whatever. So just trying to like, even though I have a ton of work to do, just being like more deliberate with like time management and stuff like that, and not like, and yeah, just trying to like get work done, make sure that I like go to sleep at like a reasonable hour and wake up at a reasonable hour, and just go get it done. It's hard, it's crazy, it is interesting how hard it is. Like, I mean, you get it, you're like, oh, I remembered how to do this part, or I figured out a way to do this part when I was in the shower at midnight, and it's just so easy to like get to that point where you're up till midnight, then you wake up at like 6 or 7 and just do it all over again. It's difficult.
Yeah, I don't know that I have been working on myself. Like, I feel like I've been just abusing myself for the last couple of weeks. I've been getting terrible sleep. Been drinking a ton of energy drinks. It's been heavy on my mind. Like, I got 8.5 hours of sleep one day this week and woke up feeling so amazing. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this every night, and then promptly went to bed at 1:30 that night. I was like, you're an idiot. So I think my thing I'm working on actively is just turning things around of like, all right, you're out of crazy move mode. I need to be well rested when I'm learning the Hermle so I don't make mistakes.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, I'm just trying to turn it around, I guess. The best thing.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard when like you don't make like you turned your business off for a month to spend a shitload of money. So now that it's back, it makes sense that like you're like, all right, makeup time. Like, let's go. We need to keep this train rolling.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like a rough number of what the move cost us just in electrical, rigging, and other, like, not including small stuff like the tables and stuff. I'd say we were probably 25 or 30 grand into the move. And that's like rigging, that's paying the electrician to wire everything. That's paying Hermle to deinstall and reinstall the new machine, all that stuff. But like that was hard costs that we couldn't avoid. Like, I could have gotten a cheaper rigging quote, but then like they also could have dropped my machine. Right. Who knows? Like, these guys are by far the best in the game. And like the electrician we found was the only one who would play ball with us within a month and a half or 2 months. So and he was fantastic. Like, I'm super happy we ended up with him, but like, that was thousands of dollars right there too. Like, he had a crew of 4 people working for 4 or 5 days straight.
Wow.
Like, that's going to cost you. Like, so yeah, it was a hemorrhage of money for sure. And all the while, paying Brad and I and all that stuff. And like, for a little bit, everything doubled. Like, we had 2 electrical bills, we had 2 rents, we had 2, all that stuff. So, I'm very glad to be back at it. And like, we're pulling out of it.
Is a good lesson in being deliberate about your actions, right? Because like, you guys had been planning for this move for a while. You knew it was going to cost a bunch of money, so you had a ton of time to save and be in the position that you could do that without killing yourself, and like, you're still able to pay yourself, and like, you weren't like in the position that I'm in or whatever, where you're just like shoestringing it for like months and months and months.
We honestly, like, I didn't think we had been saving, but we had been saving, and like had a fairly decent cash buffer built up for the move, which was very nice. Like, it is as absolutely terrifying, stressful as all this has been. Like, it has been much better than it could have been, I think, for sure. And like, we've been able to do things like buy the things we need when we move in, like buy the stuff for the kitchen, buy the shelving units and tables and all that. Like, it would have really sucked to have like just blown all of our money on the move itself. and been like having to scramble to make parts in a like very unoptimized space.
Basically the same shop, but now it's spread out, so it's kind of actually worse.
It would have been way worse. Yeah, 100%. So yeah, I'm very happy with the way that everything's worked out. It's been going really well.
Nice. That's awesome.
Great. Well, I think that's a great place to cut it. Thank you, obviously, as always.
Yeah.
You know, great to get to catch up on air.
It's always so much fun.
Yeah. And let's see, new Patreon thank yous to Brian, Faro Technologies. Thank you guys for joining. Lets the show be possible.
Yeah. Double shout out to Graham. Thanks, Graham.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for listening, and I will be back next week.